be recording this session, and we will put it in Sitecore User Group Jordan YouTube channel, so you can review it later if needed. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Mohammed, and thank you, everyone. So yeah, as Mohammed mentioned, so working as a Sitecore Architect at american.eagle.com. So yeah, to start with, let me find this. Yeah. So today, so I'll be talking about building custom MCP connectors for Sitecore Agentic Studio. I mean, you guys have seen, right? Like over the last few months, we have seen how AI is becoming part of our development workflows, with the Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor, whatnot. And Sitecore Agentic Studio is one of the latest examples of that. So basically, Agentic Studio provides AI agents that can assist with the various Sitecore tasks. It can create content for you and review the content for you and all those stuff. So I was actually exploring that. So while exploring that, I wanted to understand how we could extend those agents with our own capabilities, right? I mean, the Sitecore out of the box agents can provide few of the flexibilities, but what else? If you want to create, if you want to integrate your Sitecore system with a third-party API, so how we can automate that? How we can do that using the Sitecore Agentic AI custom connectors? So that's where I thought I started exploring how we could do. So the example I will use throughout this presentation is a custom tool called create template. So why I took this example? So when I actually exploring these agents, so the out of the box agents were able to create the content for us, but it was not able to create the template. So I was like, okay, let me take that as a use case and implement and see how that goes. And it went well. So throughout this session, I will use the custom tool I developed, which is create template. But the real objective is it's not only the tool itself, it's like how understanding how to build your own MCP connector so you can expose any custom business capability to AI. By the end of this season, you will be able to understand how the connector works and why OAuth is required, and how to connect it to Agentic Studio, and how can you build similar tools for your own projects and needs. So let's come to agenda. So this is what we will cover today. We'll start by looking at why custom connectors are useful and the limitations I encountered with the out-of-the-box capabilities. Then we will walk through the architecture and see how the different components fit together. After that, I'll show how I built the connector using the Next.js and created my first custom tool. And the challenges I encountered was the authentication. So we'll spend some time understanding why OAuth was required and what endpoints needed to be implemented. And finally, I'll demonstrate the connector inside the Agentic Studio and finish with the Q&A. So let's start with the session. Why do we even need custom MCP connectors? So yeah, Sitecore Agentic Studio already provides, as I mentioned, it provides several built-in capabilities that help authors and developers. So these tools are designed to solve common use cases, and they work really well. So yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, so however, every organization has its own business requirements, right? So some organization needs to integrate, some with CRM, and some might, you want to automate the publishing content through agents. So some may want to connect with Content Hub, all that stuff, right? So since Sitecore cannot provide tools for every organization's custom requirements, they provide something even kind of more powerful, that's ability for us to build our own tools using MCP connectors. So once the connector is in place, the agent can invoke our custom tools just like it involves the built-in ones. So that's why we need the custom MCP connectors. And now that we have seen why custom connectors are valuable, the next question is how do we actually build one, right? So at a very high level, the process is quite straightforward. Firstly, identify the business capability that you want to expose. That capability can be anything, as I mentioned, from creating your Sitecore templates to publish the content and maybe interact with Content Hub or whatnot. So that's your first step, the business requirement. The next one will be building an MCP server. So this server becomes the bridge between the Agentic Studio and your backend systems. So that's the MCP server. So inside this server, like, you can expose the tools, like, it can be one, or you can have multiple tools. And each tool represents a specific capability that the AI can invoke, right? The AI can be, here Sitecore Agentic Studio in our case. So once the connector is, deployed and connected to Agentic Studio, and after the authentication, like Agentic Studio, needs an authentication. So after that, Agentic Studio automatically discovers all the available tools from that custom MCP server. So from that point on, whenever the AI determines that one of your tools can help answer a user's request, it invokes the tool automatically. So the nice thing about this approach is, like, that architecture doesn't change, regardless of what the tool does, like, what the capability you are trying to implement. So whether the tool can be create templates and any other thing. So let's look at the architecture of this solution and how all these these pieces fit together, right? So this is a kind of high level architecture of the solution. So at the top, it's a Sitecore Agentic Studio, which acts as your MCP client. When a user submits prompt, the AI determines whether one of the available tools can help answer the request that you have asked. So if it can, it invokes the appropriate tool through the MCP protocol. Then the request is sent to the custom MCP server, and that server routes the request to the correct tool. So in this case, in our demo, it's going to be create template. The tool then communicates with the Sitecore authoring API. So when so the create template tool that I created actually communicates with Sitecore authoring API to create the template. So the similar architecture can be used to expose tools for any of your custom capabilities, like not out of the box, but any of your custom capability. So this is kind of solution architecture. So now that we have looked at the overall architecture, so now let's see how the connector is actually implemented. So for this implementation, I choose Next.js as a framework. I mean, my main reason was, like, we were actually, anyway, working with Next.js on Sitecore AI, and we have pretty much flexibility, deploying this to Vercel and all, and the API routes are anyway out of the box, so, and it works well with the TypeScript, right? So that's why I choose Next.js. But it can be anything, like any programming language we can pick. So that's the reason that I picked up the Next.js. Yeah, and that's it. This isn't your Next.js specific solution. You could implement the same MCP server using ASP.NET and Java Spring Boot and Node.js, or any framework capable of exposing your HTTP endpoints and implementing the MCP protocol. So this project itself is organized into a few key areas. So this is the structure of the project, like basically the folder and all. I mean, I have this in my GitHub repo, which is a public repo. I'll share that URL with you guys at the end of the presentation, so you could have a look. So the app, API MCP, right? That folder contains your MCP endpoint. So this is the entry, point that the Agentic Studio communicates with. So it exposes the available tools and its available routes, execution requests to the appropriate handler. The next one you could see is API OAuth folder. So that contains your OAuth implementation. So we will talk about this in detail later, but these endpoints are required because Agentic Studio expects every remote MCP server to support a secure authentication flow. Then you have a well-known folder that exposes the OAuth metadata endpoints. So these endpoints allow Agentic Studio to automatically discover, how the connector handles the authentication. I kind of separated the Sitecore specific logic into the lib Sitecore. This keeps the API calls, from API MCP your tool. This keeps the API calls isolated from the MCP implementation, and kind of making it easy to maintain and test. So that's why I kind of separated all the Sitecore stuff. And you have the tools folder that contains implementation of each custom tool. So as I mentioned, the example tool is a created template. But the same pattern can be used to any additional tools. Finally, the middleware.ts that will be responsible for your authentication and request validation. And there is your .env file that secures your all your configurations related to your Sitecore and OAuth. So yep, this is about your project structure. So with the project structure in place, the next step was to implement the first custom tool. So let's look at how I built the create template tool and how it can interact with the Sitecore, right? So now the MCP server is in place. The next step is implementing the tool. Remember, right, an MCP connector itself, it doesn't perform any business operations. So what it does, instead of performing its business operations, it simply exposes, your tools. Each tool, it represents a single business capability, and its responsibility is straightforward. Like, it accepts a definition, whatever you actually want to send it, and then it returns the information about the newly, whatever the capability, you wanted. So in this case, basically it accepts a template definition and create the Sitecore templates and create any sections and fields, and then finally returns the information about that newly created template. So, I mean, the exact same pattern could be used to create any tools that you want to. So what information does the AI actually send to this tool? Let's see. Excuse me. So every MCP tool exposes schema that tells the AI, what information it needs. So in this case, the tool accepts a template name and then a parent folder path where you want to create the template, and a collection of your sections and fields. So this is your example payload for that tool. I mean, one of the things I really liked about MCP is that the AI understands these schemas. Instead of us manually passing prompts, the model automatically produces the structured input that matches the tool definition. So that means, what that means, the handler always receives a strongly typed data rather than the a raw natural language. So as part of this presentation, this is the schema that my tool actually needs. But this schema can actually, you can provide directly to the chat interface, or you could, example, I would say, you actually give a screenshot to the Agentic Studio, and this is the component, and analyze the component and get me the template definition and create the template using the custom tool. So what it does, as soon as you upload the screenshot, it can actually, extract all the fields. From that field, it can create this type of, the payload, and that can be actually used for your create template tool. So that's what it does. So this is kind of, the payload that create template tool needed. And then it can be same, right? So that's one. And then let's see, the tool execution flow. This slide, shows what happens behind the scenes after the user submits a prompt, right? So first, the AI receives the data about the request. If it determines, then it determines the create template tool that can satisfy the request, and it invokes the tool through the MCP protocol. And the MCP server receives this request and executes the corresponding handler, like as I mentioned. The handler then communicates with the Sitecore authoring API to create the requested template. Finally, the response is written all the way back to the AI, right? From all this flow, from prompt to that MCP server to the tool. And then once the tool is executed, the response is written all the way back to the AI, which incorporates the results into its final response to the user. One important thing to notice is that the AI itself never talks directly to Sitecore. All communication happens through your MCP connector, and where we have a tool that's kind of a simple API. So now, connecting the Agentic Studio to the MCP connector. I mean, I'm going to show all this in the demo, but how do you connect the Agentic Studio to the MCP connector? So at this point, we have the MCP server, and it's my first tool, right? The next step was to connecting it to the Sitecore Agentic Studio. So when you go to your Sitecore AI portal, and you will see something called Agentic Studio in your app, and then you can navigate to your settings and tools, and then choose add your custom MCP connector. We provide the URL of our MCP endpoint, which in my case, it's the Next.js app exposing the app, app/API/MCP. So this is how you connect to the MCP Agentic Studio. Then at this point, like what we have the MCP server, and we have the create template tool. The next step was to connecting it to the Agentic Studio. So how you actually do that? By going to your portal, Agentic Studio, click on the settings, custom tools. Right? I'll show that in action. But yeah, we have at this point we have our MCP server and the create template tool. The next step was to create, of course, connecting to the Agentic Studio. Unlike ChatGPT or Claude, I mean, since we have this MCP server available, you could kind of use this for any AI, like ChatGPT or Claude. You can go and add this custom MCP connector, and you can start utilizing it. But when it comes to the Sitecore Agentic Studio, it first needs to establish the trust with the remote MCP server. Like, with the Sitecore Agentic Studio, you cannot directly add any MCP endpoint. So it actually needs to establish the, trust with that server. So what happened was, the first thing the Agentic Studio actually, when you click on the connect, right, the Agentic Studio actually starts, beginning an authentication process. So it wasn't trying to execute my tool. It was trying to understand, how my connector authenticates your user. So what that means, that any tool can be discovered. Agentic Studio expects the connector to expose OAuth metadata, and it supports client registration, authenticate the user, and returns an access token. Only after this authentication, the flow completes successfully, and then Agentic Studio consider it as it's trusted, and it start beginning the discovering the available tools. So this is an important distinction because OAuth is not an optional feature. It's a prerequisite for integrating a remote MCP connector with Agentic Studio, unlike ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, right? So we'll see how it was done. So how Agentic Studio connects to a custom MCP connector, right? Now let's look at what actually happens behind the scenes when you actually click on connect in the Sitecore Agentic Studio to your MCP server. So although it appears to be a single action, there are several important steps takes place before the connector is ready to use. The first thing is, Agentic Studio does not call the MCP endpoint. Instead, it starts by discovering how the connector handles the authentication. Yep, right. So basically, it calls the protected resource metadata endpoint, and then the authorization server metadata endpoints under the well-known path. So these endpoints tells the Agentic Studio, where the authorization server is and how the OAuth flow should be performed. And once the metadata is available, Agentic Studio performs dynamic client registration. And during this step, the connector returns a client ID, and it also returns a client secret, allowing Agentic Studio to establish trust with the connector. So after the user registration, the user is redirected to your OAuth provider. In my implementation, I used Auth. You could use any public OAuth providers. The user authenticates, and then it grants the consent. Auth then returns an authorization code, which Agentic Studio extends for access token. So basically, what happens is it tries to connect with the whether your MCP endpoint is secured. It's not an open source. If you have the URL of MCP endpoint, you cannot directly integrate with your Agentic Studio. It needs to be protected. So at this point, the connector is once the secure flow is established, the connector is considered trusted, and then Agentic Studio can now securely invoke the MCP endpoint. And the final step is going to be tool discovery. So basically, what Agentic Studio does is it creates the list of available tools exposed by the connector. In my case, it's only one, which is create template, and then that makes all those tools available to the AI agent. So from the user perspective, this enterprise is hidden, of course, behind the connect button. But the understanding the flow is important because it explains why implementing OAuth support is essential for any remote MCP connector. And then creating the connector. So how do you create the connector? So you go to the Agentic Studio. Once the MCP server, of course, you need to have your MCP server is deployed and the OAuth is implemented. Connecting the Agentic Studio is straightforward. From the Agentic Studio, navigate to the settings tool, and then you could choose add custom MCP connector. You just need the URL of your MCP endpoint, and then click connect. Agentic Studio automatically begins the OAuth flow that we discussed. After successful authentication, the connector is trusted and it becomes available with the platform. So at this point, no tools have been executed. We simply established, correct, you got your MCP connector, you got your OAuth in place, and you connected the MCP server to your Agentic Studio. But no tools have been executed, right? We simply established a secure connection between our Agentic Studio and our custom MCP server tool. So once connected, Agentic Studio discovers the tools exposed by the connector. So after the authentication succeeds, Agentic Studio automatically queries the MCP server to discover the available tools that our MCP server is exposing. So there is no manual registration or configuration is needed. My custom connector appears alongside Sitecore built-in tools. So if you see Marketer MCP and Sitecore Documentation MCP, these tools are out of the box from Sitecore, but you see the Sitecore template tool MCP, right? So that's my custom connector. So now the tool is available. Let's see what happens, when a user asks the AI to create the template. So let's go back to the, the demo. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So if I go back to, yeah, this is my Sitecore Cloud portal. Maybe I can put some, yeah. So this is my Sitecore AI portal, and there is this Eagle Kick demo is one of my environment. So you see Agentic Studio. So you come here. So this is where Sitecore Agentic Studio things are there. You will have your agents, you will have your chat interface, spaces, skills, or whatnot. So let's go to the settings. And then you'll have tools. These are the standard tools from Sitecore out of the box, and these are the page tools out of the box Sitecore tools, and then these are the MCP connectors. You see the marketer MCP and Sitecore documentation MCP. Then there you go, the Sitecore template tool MCP. So this is what my actual MCP tool. So as I mentioned, I got my app deployed to Vercel, and this is my URL, like MCP template to vercel.app. And this is like basically some information, but the endpoint is hosted at API/MCP, right? So how do you do that? You have, this is your URL, and click on add custom connector. So if you see, this is where it says connect to a remote MCP server that uses the provider sign-in flow. If your that means if your MCP server is not actually using the sign-in flow, you cannot connect that MCP server with Sitecore Agentic Studio. So you actually use your URL, your name of your tool, so whatever test connector, and then the URL. So since the same already the connector is connected to my instance, I'm not going to add connector, but let's go and use this. So let me do disconnect. So as soon as you do that, you will get, you will have this toggle that it needs to be enabled to use the Sitecore, to use your custom tool, and then you see the connect, right? So this is where, as soon as you click on connect, so what it is doing, it is actually started looking at your OAuth metadata and where it exposes. So basically, it's trying to understand. It's going through your sign-in flow. So once the sign-in flow is able to be done. So basically, since I have already logged in, you didn't see that the user interface to enter the credentials, the auto provider. So it actually directly, since I'm already logged in, it says the web page. This is the redirect URL that Sitecore Agentic Studio is actually giving back to the response of auto. So that's why you see this whatever 0.0.0.3000 tools. And if you see custom MCP auth is success, and your custom MCP is Sitecore template tool and custom MCP. So you need this one. So this is where it tells you it got succeeded, right? So that's the custom MCP auth success. So once it is success, you will see it's connected. So you can disconnect or you can connect and all that stuff. So, and then what happens is, so now that means your custom MCP connector is available for your Sitecore Agentic Studio. So how you can validate this? Because this connect is, it got connected by looking at this particular button. And let's go to the chat, right? And where you could actually look at it, if you see the skills and tools, there is this, these are the skills that are out of the box, and MCP. So the MCP, you see marketer MCP and Sitecore documentation MCP are out of the box, but then you see the Sitecore template tool MCP. This is mine. This is the tool that I have. So I'll pick this MCP for this particular chart context. And then I have a prompt that is create a template using create template tool with the below input. So for this POC, I have this prompt, but you could actually move this to your agent. You can create your custom agent and then move this to your agent instruction, or you could actually use your skill. There is a you could create your own skill and move these instructions to the skill.md file, and then pick that skill, like from here how you have skills, right? You can create your own skill and move this prompt to that skill based on all your requirements. So this is just a POC kind of thing, which actually lets you create the template. So if you see create a template using create template with the below input, so I'm gonna say SUGJO demo. So it actually it says thinking, and it was able to call the create template tool from my custom MCP connector. And so basically it says, template name this one, parent path, context is success. So it's just done. I created a template SUG demo, and the template ID is this one. So if I go and look at the template ID from the Sitecore content editor, where is the template ID? No. Yeah, this guy. So this is the template ID that it created. Yeah, so this is a template. SCG Jordan, your content, body, caption, heading, image. So one question you might have got, like how the MCP connector is able to identify this environment or this Sitecore instance to create the template. So what I did was, for my POC, let me go to the code now. Show it. Yeah, so basically I kind of yeah, so Sitecore, this is the env example, but you have your .env file where you could actually create, you provide your client ID, client secret from your XM Cloud environment, and then authoring endpoint. So this is how my tool is able to actually, identify the Sitecore instance, and it is calling, basically it calls your authoring endpoint based on your client ID and client secret. And then it was able to identify the Sitecore instance and able to create the template in the provided Sitecore instance. So that's one thing. And then you have auth domain. So I used auth, but you could definitely use any OAuth provider. So this is my I was able to your web client ID. You create a OAuth application. I think this is mine. So which will give you your client ID and client secret, and then you can point to your client ID, client secret, and the auth domain and auth audience. So basically, these are from our OAuth providers. So in my case, it's auth, and this is the MCP base URL. That's the URL where your base URL, what you call domain. So in my case, it's localhost 3000. But as soon as I deploy it to Vercel, that base URL is going to be this guy. So this is how the Agentic Studio was able to query your custom MCP connector tool, and that internal tool is exposing a create template tool, and that is actually a simple Next.js API endpoint that was able to recognize your Sitecore by having these your client ID and client secret, and it was able to create the template. And the one caveat is the Sitecore Agentic Studio needs an OAuth provider to establish the secure connection between Agentic Studio and MCP connector. I think that's all, but yeah, open to any questions. And yeah.
Thank you, Jagadheesh. Quick question. Can you show us that create template TypeScript
Oh, yeah.
file?
You want this one, the payload or the template?
Actually, the code itself.
Code, okay, the code.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's directly create template is this guy, and it basically calls your authoring endpoint from execute authoring GraphQL, and then yeah. So if I go here, it gets the Sitecore access token from the env variables that we provided. So it calls your authoring endpoint, and it gets the access token from the client ID and client secret. Once it gets the access token, it goes to post authoring GraphQL, right? And it goes here. You see this authoring endpoint is coming from your env, and then authoring endpoint has your method post and your bearer token. That token is access token that we got from the client ID and client secret. And it's yeah, you see the query, and it's basically passing the query, and where the queries is.
That's like SQL mutation query?
Yeah, exactly. Mutation query, right.
Okay.
If you see the query, and I go back here. Yeah, resolve parent we got. Somewhere it should be, 1 second. Okay. Sitecore graph here. Post authoring. Somewhere I have queries. Maybe is in tools.
No worries, that's fine.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, post authoring query.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jagadish.
Yeah.
Not sure everyone if anyone has questions for Jagadish before we wrap up. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the useful information that you provided. Like, do you see, um, you mentioned at the beginning that you provide this on um, Git repository. Is
Oh yeah.
that something we can
Right.
access it? Or if you can share the link, that would be great.
Yep. I do have it. I'm not sure if I can share from the Google Meet. Sham, Mohammed, I don't know.
If you want to send it to me, Jagadish, I can
Oh, yeah.
include with the recording in the
Right.
YouTube.
That would. Yep.
I can
Thank
pass
you.
it.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just shared that with you.
Thank you, Jagadish.
Thank you.
Jagadish, a quick question, like in that prompt, is there an easier way to pass the template information other than using like a JSON format?
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, so what my thought was, it's not. I mean, this is that our tool needs that kind of payload. But
Mhm.
what actually we can do is you can pick a screenshot of your any component, right? Let's say you got a component which has title, description, text. So what you could do is you upload that screenshot to this chat, and then you can get analyze the screenshot and get me the template definition and pass that template definition to the create template tool. So that definition, the AI will be able to get from the screenshot, and it can be able to pass to the create template tool, and that prompt alone can create the template without this particular prompt. So there is a place, Muhammad, that we call it as skills. So basically what you could do is, come on, so you can create a skill and name it whatever, like Sitecore template creation using the attached image or whatever. And here you can pass all the prompt information, example, the screenshot, and you can, I think I have some examples, maybe test kit. Come on. Yeah. So if you see Sitecore component creation agent, you analyze the upload screenshots and create Sitecore XM component structure in a single pass. So responsibilities, all this, kind of a proper prompt that you can, analyze the screenshot, infer the component name, infer only the visible structure and fields, create the Sitecore template first, and capture the return template ID. And if you see template creation rule, right? Use the create template tool under the create Sitecore data template. This is only approved for template creation. So steps, call the create template with template, all this stuff. So now never use a template name or path as a template ID. If create template, so basically you could pass all this stuff. This is like, the end-to-end flow I'm still working on, but it should work. Like, you can pass it as your skill, and you can actually attach the skill from here, like, skills. All the created skills you'll be able to see over here, and you can just attach the skill as well as MCP to your context, and then start prompting.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you so much, Jagadish. If no one else has any questions, thanks everyone for joining. And as I said, I will be posting this into the YouTube channel very soon. Thank you, everybody.
thank you. Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye.